All right, let's get some things in order. Who is ESPN predicting to leave the Indiana Fever in free agency? Who are they predicting to leave all of these teams? This is the most free agents in WNBA history. Everybody is trying to cash in on this new CBA. We got to figure out who is about to be leaving Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever, along with some of the other teams. I think there are a few players that are going to be demanding.
Let's start with the moment that set social media on fire this week.
It's very uncertain for the entire league in general, but you're a free agent for the first time. Have you thought about what free agency might look like for you if you'd like to be back?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a restricted free agent, so I think that changes things a little bit, but I've loved my years here in Indiana. So obviously with a lot of uncertainty, you don't know what's to come, but I've built a life here, and I love this franchise. I love the people. I love the fans, so we'll see what comes. Elliot?
It's a pretty unclear time across the league right now, and this is your first time going into free agency. Have you thought about what that might look like if you want to come back? Yeah, I mean, I'm a restricted free agent, so that makes things a little different. But I've truly enjoyed being here in Indiana. With so much up in the air, you never really know what comes next. But I've made a life here, and this franchise means a lot to me. I care about the people, I care about the fans, so we'll just see how everything unfolds. Elliot. Look, Caitlin Clark is not just changing the league anymore. She's also changing how Indiana's front office makes decisions. Reports have been popping up everywhere saying Clark quietly pushed management to keep Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull. These are two teammates she trusts deeply, and she wanted both of them to stay no matter what. And here's the crazy part, it looks like her voice carried weight. So what do you think? Is Clark right to use her influence this way, or is she crossing the line as a player?
Really, really good. Actually, I'm just actually really motivated, and I think I'm at a really good spot in my life where like, I'm just excited to just like pour into my body, pour into things that I enjoy. And I'm just so excited for this upcoming season because I don't know where I'm going to be. And I just feel like in the W, your golden years, I would say, is anywhere from 28 to 34.
For weeks, people kept acting like Lexie Hull was done in Indiana. There were emotional posts, goodbye-style reactions, and endless talk that she was already headed somewhere else. But most of that noise was built on weak clues and attention-grabbing headlines. What really happened seems much simpler. Caitlin Clark stepped in. She made sure Lexie Hull and Sophie Cunningham were not easy pieces to move. More than one report says Clark went straight to Fever management and made her position clear. Those two players were off limits. She wants them back. She wants that trust and comfort around her next year. And honestly, her reasoning makes sense. Clark's second season is huge for this team, could shape everything going forward. Indiana climbed from the bottom of the league to the semifinals, and Clark was a major reason why. But this is not only about skill. It is also about the bond she has built with players like Lexie and Sophie. You can see it during games. When Clark attacks and finds Lexie open in the corner, or when Sophie flies in for a hard rebound, it looks natural and connected. You cannot simply buy that kind of chemistry in free agency. Of course, the media turned it into a bigger drama. Caitlin Clark saves her friends from being cut. Sounds much louder than Indiana handles restricted free agents the same way most teams do. So let's make one thing clear. Lexie Hull is a restricted free agent. That means Indiana still controls the situation. If another team offers her a contract, the Fever can match it. She never really said goodbye. She only said she was unsure about what came next, which is exactly what players usually say before negotiations start. But the real moment came from Clark's response. She wrote just 3 words under Lexie's post. "So proud of you." That did not feel like a farewell at all. Felt more like support. A quiet way of saying, "I've got you." And you can be sure the front office saw it. Because when Clark shows public support for someone, people in charge pay attention. This is not 2023 anymore. Caitlin Clark is not just another player on the team. She is a multi-million-dollar presence. Her voice now carries as much weight as anyone in the coaching staff or the front office. So why does this matter so much? Sophie Cunningham and Lexie Hull may not be the top scorers, but they bring something that cannot be measured easily. Toughness and loyalty. That is part of what kept this team together when injuries hit almost every part of the roster. Think back to when Clark got hurt late in the season. Sophie was the first one speaking in front of the cameras. She defended Clark and helped keep the locker room steady. And when Lexie struggled through a rough shooting stretch, Clark kept passing her the ball until she finally saw one go in. That is real trust, and you cannot fake that kind of belief. So why would Indiana even think about letting them walk? Money. That is the plain answer. The Fever are going into an offseason where a big part of the bench is entering free agency, and the salary cap is tight. They cannot keep everyone. But what they really cannot afford is frustrating the player who almost single-handedly brought this franchise back to life. That is the level of power Caitlin Clark has now. If she wants someone kept around, the organization listens. Simple as that. This is the same franchise that once leaned heavily on analytics and long-term planning. Now they are making choices based on what helps number 22 feel settled. And honestly, that is understandable. When you have a once-in-a-generation talent who sells out arenas, moves jerseys, and puts your team on national TV every week, you build around what she sees. Not because she is demanding, but because she has earned that voice. And let's be honest, the Fever were a mess before she got there. They did not just need a point guard. They needed a true leader. Someone big enough to force management to think and act differently. Clark brought all of that. So when she pulls management aside and says, "I want Sophie and Lexie back," that is not just a casual thought. That is real influence. And for anyone saying she is doing too much, here is the reality. This happens everywhere in sports. LeBron James does it. Steph Curry does it. Aya Wilson does it. If you are the reason the arena is packed and the spotlight stays on your team, then yes, you get a voice in roster decisions. The difference with Caitlin Clark is how fast she reached that point. No one in WNBA history has gotten there this quickly. And then the story became even more interesting. According to several insiders, the Fever were already looking to cut costs this offseason. That likely meant not matching the next contract Lexie got from another team. They expected interest because of her defense and value off the bench. But once Clark's side got involved, the entire tone changed. Suddenly the front office was rechecking everything. Then reports came out about a private meeting involving Clark and GM Amber Cox. People started hearing more about chemistry, continuity, and the players Clark most wanted with her. A week later, the message had changed completely. The same executives who seemed ready to let Lexie leave were now talking about keeping the core together and protecting team chemistry. In other words, Clark got the result she wanted. And it was not only about Lexie. Sources also say Sophie Cunningham was under serious discussion too. She had already been taking heavy criticism, especially after that WNBA warning situation. The front office reportedly looked ready to move on from Sophie just to avoid more noise. But then Clark stepped in again. She made it clear she wanted Sophie back as well. Think about what that means. The same player who took heat online for defending Clark is now being supported by Clark in return. That is real loyalty. And that kind of loyalty sent a message to the front office. Because the truth is, if the Fever had let Sophie go after everything she did for Clark, the backlash would have been huge. Fans would have seen it as a straight betrayal. You cannot push out the one player who physically stood up for your franchise star when things got heated on the court. That is not how you build trust with fans. So Clark's move was not just smart, it was needed. She may have saved the Fever from making a terrible decision, and from taking another public hit. And honestly, this team does not need more bad headlines. It needs stability. It needs consistency. It needs a locker room that stays focused on winning, instead of getting pulled into drama. And the connection between Clark, Sophie, and Lexie gives them exactly that. They fit together. Clark brings energy, Sophie brings fearlessness, and Lexie brings calm defense. That mix is a big reason they kept beating expectations all season. So no, this is not about favorites or friendship. This is about winning, and Caitlin Clark clearly knows what winning takes. Even bigger, what Clark just did was not only about keeping teammates close. It sent a message to the entire WNBA. She basically showed that if a team wants to win with her, it has to protect the players she trusts. And that message hit hard around the league. Make no mistake, this was not some small locker room request. It was a real show of power. Clark has already reached the point where her voice matters more than half the room upstairs. From now on, every decision Indiana makes, trades, signings, marketing, all of it comes back to one question. How does this affect Caitlin? And honestly, that is exactly how it should be. You do not treat a generational player like just another name on the roster. You treat her like the base of everything. You build around her. And this whole situation proves it. Clark is shaping Indiana's future now. And let's be real for a second. When people first heard she stepped in to keep Sophie and Lexie, half the internet went crazy. Some called it favoritism. Others said she was too controlling. But those same people forget how wild last season really was. Half the roster was hurt. The media turned everything into a circus. The whole league tracked her every move. She took hard hits on the floor, got booed on the road, and still kept showing up, knocking down threes and dragging her team into the playoffs. You do not survive a season like that without real people beside you. And for Clark, those people were Sophie and Lexie. Sophie spoke up when almost nobody else did. When critics came after Clark, Sophie answered. When Clark took hard fouls, Sophie looked ready to step in. That kind of loyalty sticks with people. And Lexie is the glue. Quiet, steady, and reliable in big moments. She is exactly the kind of player every star needs next to them. She handles the little things that may not make highlights but absolutely help teams win. She spaces the floor, defends multiple spots, and never complains about her role. You cannot replace that kind of trust with a random free agent. Trust is not something you can just trade for, and Caitlin Clark understands that better than anyone. So yes, she used her influence to stop the team from breaking apart something that already works. That is not ego. That is leadership. And if Indiana is smart, it will keep listening. Because if we are being honest, the Fever have a history of ruining their own momentum. They move forward one year and tear it down the next. Clark's move pushes them to stop doing that. By backing Sophie and Lexie, she is basically saying, stop rebuilding every few months and start building something that lasts. That is what serious teams do. There is also another part of this story people are not discussing enough: the timing. All of this is happening right before one of the most uncertain off-seasons the WNBA has faced in years. The collective bargaining agreement is getting close to expiring, and everyone is preparing for tense negotiations. There is even talk about a possible lockout in 2026, and players can feel that pressure. Nobody wants to be left insecure or stuck with a team that does not value them. That is why Clark's loyalty move feels different. She is sending a message to the rest of the roster. If you stand with me, I will stand with you. In a league where players often feel replaceable, that matters. And for a young superstar to already have this much pull is historic. Even veterans like Aya Wilson and Breanna Stewart did not have this much influence this early. Clark's reach is not just about stats anymore. It is about power. When she speaks, people listen. When she posts, fans react. When she pushes for something, ownership responds. It sounds wild, but she is becoming the kind of player the WNBA has never truly had before. A superstar whose fan-driven power is strong enough to shape real decisions. Now think about what keeping Sophie and Lexie means for the rest of the roster. It changes Indiana's direction completely. It says they are choosing chemistry over cap savings. It says they are finally listening to the players who make this team worth watching. It says they are done pretending this is still only a rebuild. The truth is, Indiana's window is open right now. Clark is in her prime, Boston controls the paint, and the league is finally paying attention. You do not throw that away just to save a little money. Keeping Sophie and Lexie tells everyone the Fever are serious. They are not just keeping role players, they are keeping the heartbeat of the team. And yes, Caitlin Clark helped make that happen. So does that make her the unofficial general manager of the Fever? Maybe not officially, but in real terms, pretty much yes. Because ask yourself this: would any of it have happened if someone else had asked? Probably not. If Sophie or Lexie went to management alone, they might already be gone. But with Clark backing them, suddenly they become important core pieces. That is real influence, and it shows how fast the power balance in the WNBA is changing. This is not the old version of the league where players stayed quiet and just followed orders. The new generation, led by stars like Clark, is changing how front offices operate. They are not only athletes anymore. They are stakeholders. And Clark just showed every young player how to use leverage without creating a scene. She did not send out some dramatic tweet. She did not post a vague message. She simply told her team what she wanted and they listened. And fans loved it. The comments were full of support. Fever fans were calling her the boss. Others were saying finally someone understands what this team actually needs. Because deep down most people know she is right. Keeping Sophie and Lexie is not just about friendship. It is about building something real. Championships are won by keeping the right people close. Just ask any all-time great. Michael Jordan had Pippen. Kobe had Fisher. Steph had Draymond. And Caitlin has Sophie and Lexie. They are not just teammates, they reflect how she plays. They settle her, protect her, and make the game easier around her. That is why so many fans are calling this the smartest move of the offseason. Instead of letting management break apart something that already works, Clark made sure it stayed together. That is not diva behavior. That is winning behavior. And honestly, it is about time the WNBA had a star who understands how to build a legacy, not just a highlight reel. So going into next season, the Fever now have exactly what they need: leadership, chemistry, and a core that truly trusts each other. And Caitlin Clark deserves real credit for that. The league may not love how much power she already has, but it cannot argue with the outcome. Because one thing is clear: the Fever are not a rebuilding project anymore. They are a team being shaped by the strongest voice in women's basketball. And if the front office was smart enough to listen this time, this could be the first true step toward a championship.